What zero-tolerance school stories do you have? Left a BB gun in my friend's car in high school. Security saw it and he got kicked out. I talked to the principal, who was our friend and mentor, about reversing the decision or taking the punishment myself. He was just as upset as me, but he kept explaining that his hands were tied. He finally just looked me in the eye and said zero tolerance. Actually, he used my name afterward, so I knew the conversation was over. My friend graduated from an alternative school. A boy bullied me for almost an entire year, called me fat, that kind of thing. I said if he kept talking to me, I was going to kill him. I got in school suspension for 2 days. He got a talk from the guidance counselor about how you shouldn't bully girls you have a crush on. Edit. It's been so long that I don't really remember what happened, but the reason I got caught is because a teacher saw me crying. She came over to investigate while he was harassing me and heard me say that to him. Because the teacher didn't hear him say anything to me, I was the only one who got in trouble. I once got suspended because a security guard found an unloaded airsoft pistol in the back of my truck. Let me be clear, by pistol, I mean those ones made of clear plastic, and by back of my truck, I mean behind the passenger seat of a crew cab with tinted rear windows. This security guard is really doing his job, making these suburban high schools safe for everyone. Also, I had a friend who got suspended for bringing a metal butter knife to school with his lunch. A knife is a knife, people. There can be no tolerance for weapons or logic and reasoning. This was 10 years ago. My cousin, 1 grade lower than me, got into a fight at school. Zero tolerance policy says they are both suspended. Attached to this policy is if a student is involved in 3 separate fights within their time at the high school, then they were expelled. Within 2 weeks of my cousin returning, one of the guy's friends started a fight with my cousin. They are both suspended. A few weeks after he returns again, another friend of the original kid starts a fight with my cousin. In each situation, the other kid threw the first punch. Zero tolerance each time means it didn't matter. That is how children outsmarted the zero tolerance policy and why my cousin graduated from a private high school. In high school, I got suspended for 1 week because I had a bottle of prescription painkillers in my locker. I was taking them because I got a serious knee injury while playing for the school baseball team. I also got kicked off the team and wasn't allowed to participate in any sports at school for the last 2.5 years of my high school education. The principal explained to me that they had a zero tolerance policy to drugs of any kind. Worst part is I could have went to at least 10 different lockers in school and shown him drugs in there, but he wouldn't let me because I shouldn't be snitching on my peers. Screw you, Principal Vickers. When I was in high school, a girl spit in my eye. I see that as the lowest form of an insult you could possibly do to someone, so naturally I retaliated. I yelled and screamed while my friend held me back. Eventually, due to heart issues and being overwhelmed with the stress on my body, I passed out. I woke up in a classroom, and that was about it. I gave the office my account on things, and they did their investigation. Well, if I remember correctly, it was a day or 2 later before we were both suspended for fighting. Not as extreme as other people's, but I was constantly belittled by athletes in school. I always sucked it up, but never went to the administration because I knew they held athletes in a godlike light. When I finally broke and retorted, only verbally calling them an idiot after 15 minutes of being threatened, I was sent to the dean and given a permanent mark on my record. And before you ask, no, I don't live in a place like Texas. I live in Northern California, one of the least sports-oriented areas of the U.S. There wasn't really a zero-tolerance thing back then, but school was over. I was starting my walk home, and a friend runs by and drops his bag by me and yells to me to carry it. We were going to play hockey after school, so whatever. Nothing of circumstance came of it. I never heard where he was even running to. Next day, teacher is all pissed off. I go in to see the principal, and turns out my friend was trying to pick a fight. Mind you, apparently all he ever did was run after someone, but never even got close to them. Not even the same block. There was no fight. This also happened all outside of the school. So naturally, my friend was suspended for a week plus remaining days in that week. And because I carried his bag, I was an accomplice in the fight, which never happened. I was suspended for the remaining days in that week. There was like 2 to 3 day vacation for me that I was happy to take. It was all shitty rainy days, but I was happy to leave. I'm in Britain where zero tolerance isn't really a thing. I think the closest thing we got to zero tolerance were when teachers would hold an entire class back in detention, including the ones who were not disruptive and were doing the work. It seriously pissed me off when I was at school. It happened mostly during years 7, 8, and 9. I'd have been 11 when I started year 7, which is the first year of secondary school in Britain. Teachers at my school did it because it was to punish the disruptive students. They wanted the innocent to blame the guilty and ostracize them so they wouldn't do it again. When I was in 10th grade, I was eating dinner with my family and my dad accidentally spills his beer all over my shirt. No big deal, so I go upstairs and take my shirt off for the night. The next day while I'm getting dressed, I see that I'm out of clean shirts to wear, so without thinking I grab the shirt from last night and put it on, eat breakfast and get out the door. The day was pretty normal until I was called up to the front office. I wasn't really a bad kid or anything, so I wasn't too worried. Once I arrived, the principal informed me that another student told him that I smelled like beer and assumed that I had been drinking. I told the principal about what happened last night and assured him that I had not been drinking. He tells me that it still counts as bringing alcohol onto school grounds, and for that I was suspended. TLDR, some people drink their alcohol, others wear it, but it is all the same in the eyes of the principal. A kid from my school tweeted "suicide bomb, #RIP. This was apparently some references to a song, and the dude tweeted it right after a breakup. Anyway, my school decides to evacuate everybody for 3 hours while they bring in over a dozen K-9 units. There were 3 news helicopters there as well, along with a bunch of cop cars. The kid ends up being expelled. In grade 4, we used to make big snow forts and have snowball fights. Our school was K-6, but we had special students in another class. Now these kids just have mild learning disabilities and were held back a year. They made snow forts too. One day, we decided we would perform a covert boulder stealing operation to enhance our measly fort. So, at the beginning of recess, we ran over and stole their boulders. Where there was a path dividing the 2 sides of the field. They had the left and we had the right. They were all at least 12 or 13 and we were 9 or 10. Not good odds. We would run over and try to steal their stuff. But if you got caught, they would hold you against the fence execution style and throw ice balls at your head. This of course led to a snow fort ban. I don't have a story, but I was blamed for a fight that happened on a weekend that wasn't even off school grounds. This kid, who doesn't even go to my school, who has a name really similar to mine, got in a fight with some kid at my school. So naturally, they thought it was me. Thankfully, a couple days earlier, my friend told me about said fight. So I was able to provide some background information to get myself out of blame. But they took me to a friggin' room with the school cop and some other people, and they were treating this like a massive deal. It's a fight that happened on the weekend at a skate park, and one of the kids doesn't even go to the same school. Why are you meddling in on their business? American Friends High School had a star athlete that way overestimated his untouchability when he went after a very well-liked but non-popular guy. Got them both suspended for 2 weeks for fighting, even though the non-popular guy just took it. Mr. Star Athlete got his career cut way short when hairline fractures nearly shattered his entire shin in training. The doctor said it was impact stress from repeated long jumps, but the rumors had it that it was helped along by a carload of non-popular guy's friends picking up Mr. Star after he got blackout at a party and giving him a going-over with a rubber hose pipe. This thread needs more vengeance in it to satisfy the rage it generates. Smiley face. Chewing gum. Rather, looking like I was chewing gum because my jaw was sore from having rubber bands on my braces. Ended up in an isolation room for the rest of the day and then got suspended for a week. Looking back now, I realize how stupid most grade school suspensions are because it doesn't really teach you anything other than the fact that you get vacation for looking like you're breaking a silly rule. A girl I hooked up with several years back told me as a senior in high school she was expelled for having a Tylenol on her. Apparently, if you had to take any drugs, you were supposed to do it in the nurse's office under their supervision. If you didn't, they just assumed it was an illicit drug and booted you, no questions asked. I got jumped in my middle school. Kid whipped at my backpack and threw me to the ground. He proceeded to punch and kick me. When he ran off, I threw a pebble and told him that I'd kill him. I got suspended for making a threat, despite having a split lip and black eyes. Another kid pushed me and I landed on my wrist wrong. Kid was coming for me again and I threw a fistful of sand. School said there was nothing they could do because my arm wasn't broken. I did, however, have a severely sprained wrist. Yet principal looked into suspending me for using a dangerous weapon. My mother ended up marching to the school and got me out of that one. One wet day in grade 4, we were all confined to the tarmac. This was done for the same reason that children are bad enough. Muddy children would be insane to deal with. However, something was stopping the proper drainage around a sewer grate. This fascinated the boys in my class, and we promptly decided it required contest. We lined up and began seeing who could jump over this very sizable puddle. Laughs were had, and a few socks were soaked. This behavior brought down the full wrath of the administration. We had flagrantly disobeyed the nature of our asphalt confinement and spit on the dry ideals of the school. What could they do when faced with such a mass uprising in puddle jumpers? To be sure, none of us dared to ever send our persons hurtling over a body of water again. We were all held in detention for 3 lunch periods. Every member of my grade with a member was forced into this, where we were to novelize our newfound understanding and respect for obeying and staying dry. Sadly, it was all for naught. Many of those punished went on to do many more terrible, dirty deeds. Guy and girl were dating. Guy decides he wants to move on. They break up. She's unhappy. One day, while Guy is at his locker, girl bashes his face in a medal for payback. Guy gets knocked out. Guy gets suspended for fighting and not being emotionally considerate toward girl. Don't know what happened to girl. Got shit thrown at me by two girls in the back of the class. Teacher was oblivious. I was convinced that it was the guy sitting next to them. We got in a fight and I got my ass handed to me and went crying to the nurse. We both got 3 days suspension. It was my first and only offense. He had been out of school more often than in because of all the shit he did. Best decision of my life. Everybody left me alone till I graduated. LOL, I did something similar. I swam breaststroke and freestyle once. For 5 years afterwards, I was bullied and called names. 6 years later, some guy pushed me up against a wall and started beating on me for apparently this reason. I beat the shit out of him, knocked him unconscious, and broke his nose. I'm autistic, so they made the punishment smaller, but I got 2 weeks off, and no one ever had me shit again. I was pretty poor growing up, and one winter I had just one coat, and it barely fit me anymore. Living in the Northwest in the late 90s, it stayed cold and breezy pretty late into the year. So come April of 99, I was wearing my ill-fitting trench coat as I went to my elementary school. I was suspended for 2 days for wearing the only coat I had to school because the administration chose that day to notice it. The day after the Columbine shooting. I was 10 and barely had any clue that something had happened to a different school, but my teachers assumed I understood what had happened and wanted to show solidarity with the trench coat mafia. During freshman year, in English, we sat in assigned groups of 4 at a square table. 2 guys, a hot girl, and myself ended up all getting along and enjoyed sitting by each other. Anyways, we had a sub one day, and he wrote that our table was being disruptive, except for the good-looking girl. Figures. So as the teacher announced that we were getting detentions, the announcements came on, and apparently I was student of the week. She ended up canceling my detention, but still gave it to the other 2 guys. My wife, a teacher, had a great student who had an A average and was as nice and responsible as they come. But one Monday, the school goes into lockdown for a routine drug search by police and their furry friends who go around sniffing lockers for weed. The student was in the bathroom at that time to change her tampon. She was on her period and was headed back to class. Since they was out of class, they searched her purse and found a blister pack with 2 Midol pills, over-the-counter painkiller for period pain, in her purse. She had forgotten they were in there. She was charged criminally and expelled. I went to a gifted/talented magnet school for kindergarten through 8th grade, and they had a serious no PDA, public displays of affections rule. In 8th grade, it got so bad that my girlfriend and I did not hug for fear of detention, and a friend of mine had a few days of lunch detention for a, and I quote, lingering high five. My school was messed up. Zero tolerance for alcohol and alcohol references, meaning I got suspended for having a t-shirt that referenced beer nuts. But the fact that I was visibly carrying a knife in my pocket and had a hunting rifle and shotgun in my truck was no big deal. We literally had an assembly on the first day of each year where the sheriff's deputies would come in and say, "We know most of you have guns in your cars and are carrying knives, so we would like it if you would leave them out of sight. Oh, and we don't tolerate alcohol violations of any kind." Knew a guy who got in a fist fight he didn't start. Because he was wearing a ring, it cut the other guy's face. It was written up as assault with a deadly weapon, and he only avoided expulsion by withdrawing to another district. The other guy who started the fight got suspended for a couple of days. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.